For those of you tracking the moon, in order to observe God's Sabbaths and holy days, I want to do this video because I came across this in Scripture, and, anything that God has taught me directly has never had to be corrected. If we get it from God's Spirit and His Word directly, it will not have to be corrected later on. So you're not going to be led down a path of deception. God is faithful. He's faithful to teach us correctly, provided that we're pursuing Him. So when God has taught me something, and then He brings it up again later in order to teach me something else, He's either adding to what He's teaching me, rounding out my understanding, and or giving me another aspect of what He's taught me. And in that process, He continues to confirm and affirm and testify that what He has taught me is correct. So I came back around to a psalm about the moon. In Psalm 104, it says, He made the moon to mark the seasons. So we've already been told that the moon is the faithful witness in the sky, that the moon marks the months because the new moon is the first day of the month, and the new moon being a rest day, as we learn in Amos 8:5, the new moon being a rest day means that we count down from that rest day, the first of the month always being a rest day. Then we're going to count down 6 work days and a rest day, 6 work days and a rest day. And we're going to continue to do that in the month. But we also know that a month has 30 days on God's calendar. And we know that according to what we have been defining a day, which is 24 hours, that there are 29.5 24-hour days in a month, in a lunar month, God having a lunar calendar and Him saying that He has 30 days in a month, we have to reconcile, well, how does 30 days in a month equate to 29.5 24-hour days? So I've spoken to you about this before. The faithful witness in the sky, when the new moon comes up, that means that it has kicked out the previous month, which means it's kicked out the previous day, and it has begun a new day. God never says that He has 24 hours in a day in the Bible. So if after 12 hours, for example, the new moon comes up, well, that's how long that last day of the month was, 12 hours. And that means that the first day of the month is going to be 12 hours because the day is still going to be defined by that separation of light and darkness. So what God is not saying in defining a month to be 30 days and a year to be 360 days, a time times and half a time, what He's not saying is that 360 days would equate to 360 24-hour days. It would equate to 354 24-hour days because a lunar cycle is 29.5 days. So it would be very similar or exactly like what Muslims are observing, at least from that perspective. Imagine that. Muslims have it right. They're actually observing this better than Christians and those calling themselves Christians and Jews. All right, so we know faithful witness in the sky. The new moon marks the month, and the moon also marks the seasons. Well, as I've taught you about the holy days, I've demonstrated to you in Scripture, based on the Scriptures, that there are date-specific holy days and there are season-specific holy days. There are only 2 season-specific holy days. The Festival of Weeks, which is also called Pentecost, and the Festival of Harvest, and the offering of first fruits, which is set in reference to, which Pentecost is set in reference to. So you had to have the first offering of first fruits when they entered the land in order to know when your Pentecost is going to be. There's also something in the Bible called the Festival of Ingathering, which is actually the same as the Festival of Tabernacles. And even though it sounds like this is a harvest-specific festival, it is not. It is a date-specific festival, which cannot correlate to a season-specific festival on a lunar calendar. A lunar calendar will never correlate to seasons consistently every year, which means that Passover, or most of you understand it as Easter, that you celebrate every spring with a bunny, well, your Easter might correlate to the Gregorian calendar, but God's Passover does not. And this means that His Passover is going to occur in every season on the seasonal year. It's not going to remain in spring. Now, here's what is meant that the moon marks the seasons. If we were working the land, we might know this. People have been farming according to the moon for many, many years. There's even a concept of a harvest moon, based on the idea that when the moon is at a particular stage, or phase, you would go out and harvest. If you read the book of Joshua, you will see that when the people entered the land, which is the way that the offering of first fruits is stated, is commanded, when you enter the land I'm going to give you and you reap its harvest, then you are to observe the offering of first fruits. That's how it's stated in Leviticus 23. In Joshua, when they entered the land and they reaped its harvest, was the day after Passover. And I realize your Easter is one day, but Passover is 7 days, from the 15th to the 21st of the month. And so the first offering of first fruits was observed on the 22nd. And that particular month was the month of Aviv, or Nisan, because we know that Passover was observed, but that doesn't mean that Passover is going to occur at the same time every year. It's going to occur in the same month, but that month is not going to land in the same season every year. The reason we know the season is because we know that the Jordan was at flood stage. And we know when the Jordan is at flood stage. We also know that the command is to observe the offering of first fruits the day after the Sabbath. We know that the 21st is a Sabbath. The last day of the Passover is a Sabbath. And so we know that it was the 22nd. And so we know the phase of the moon. And so if in that season we are continuing to be a faithful servant and look for the new moon, and we're counting down from God's new moon, the first day, counting down his Sabbaths, when the 22nd is. Now, here's a caveat to this particular month in which the offering of first fruits was observed. It was observed during Passover, and generally, the 22nd would be a Sabbath. And so the fact that the command is to observe this the day after the Sabbath means that Nisan or Aviv, same month, that particular month, if offering of first fruits is landing in that particular month during that season, then you will observe offering of first fruits on the 22nd. But every other month on his calendar, all 11 other months, you're going to observe it on the 23rd, because the command is to observe it the day after the Sabbath. Okay, so can you see how the moon is that faithful witness in the sky? How it not only marks off days and months, but it's also marking the seasons. Then as you count down the weeks from the offering of first fruits, weeks, not days, weeks, that's how it's stated. And the reason that's important is because in God's month, there are not, in his months or years or whatever, there's not a relentless set of weeks. There are 4 weeks and they're in between 2 days. The first day of the month, which is a rest day, and the last day of the month, which typically is going to be a work day, except for the month in which Pentecost is observed. And the reason for that is because the 15th would generally be a 7-day Sabbath. But then when you count down those weeks, the 16th of that month is also going to be a Sabbath because it's Pentecost. So that's going to push the rest of the month up by 1 day. Because if you have 2 Sabbaths in a row, now you're counting down work days after the second Sabbath, rather than counting down work days from the day after the Sabbath that occurs on the 15th. 7-day Sabbaths normally occur on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th of the month. Notice that I'm saying 7-day Sabbaths because the first day of the month is not a 7-day Sabbath. While it is a rest day, it's not a 7-day Sabbath because it's not preceded by 6 working days. So in the particular month, which we don't have a date, it's not a date-specific holy day, but in the month in which you would be observing Pentecost during that season, we always know that Pentecost is going to be on the 16th of that particular month. And it's important to also note that no one was observing Pentecost until they entered the land. How do we know that, guys? Because until they entered the land, they didn't observe an offering of first fruits. That's how the command was stated. When you enter the land that I'm going to give you. And then when you observe this offering of first fruits, then you're going to count down 7 weeks up to the 50th day. Not 50 days. Pentecost is not 50 days after the offering of first fruits. It is 7 weeks. And those weeks have 2 days in between. But if you count it down, you're always going to land on the 16th of the month for Pentecost. And so what does it mean that he made the moon to mark the seasons? Well, this is the time when you are harvesting. These are harvest-specific festivals, season-specific festivals. They are based on the seasons, not dates. I hope that helps. I hope it, adds to the understanding that you've already gained. If you've been observing this, I certainly hope you're observing it, because you can't be in the covenant without observing what God has commanded. Please let me know if you have questions about this, and please discern this with God.